Greetings to everyone who have joined us from around the world for conversation on Paradigm of Oneness. These series of 5 conversations are a prelude to the exhibition of artworks, Expressions of Oneness by Baba Nanak, Sheikh Farid and Kabir Das. As we understand from them, Paradigm of Oneness unifies people, genders, nature and universe into one whole. The exhibition is curated by Sangrah Sacha Sauda and supported by the Sikh Chamber of Commerce. We would like to take you on a journey of making of the exhibition with an invitation to visit us at the Visual Arts Gallery, India Habitat Centre, New Delhi between the 24th to the 28th of November. Once again, a warm welcome to everyone.
Paradigm of Oneness is my interpretation of sayings or shabads of Baba Nanak, Sheikh Farid and Kabir Das. It's an attempt to deconstruct, to simplify shabads and understand the analogy that is hidden.
जिस संग्रह में आने के बाद हमारी दुनिया एकदम बदल गई है।
पैंडेमिक के समय दिक्कतें बहुत आई और बहुत सारी दिक्कतों का हमने सामना किया, जिससे हम कल्चरल रिस्पॉन्सिबल भी बने, लोगों के साथ जुड़े, लोगों के साथ काम किया और उनको साथ लेकर चले।
जिस जगह पे काम करते हैं उस जगह को बहुत साफ रखते हैं और खुद भी पाक साफ रहते हैं और अपने सर को ढाक करके रखते हैं।
पत्तियों के साथ साथ एक इबादत भी फूलों के साथ दिख रही है।
Sacha Sauda, according to him, is or the ethical trade is nothing but exchange of knowledge. It's an act of sharing.
Good evening. Sat Shri Akal, Adab, Namaste to all of you who have joined us today for this very interesting session on oneness. We have been having a few sessions in the last 2 weeks on oneness, which is the topic taken up by Jaspal Kalra, the artist who's going to be exhibiting his work very soon. And before that, he really wanted to communicate to all of us what his thoughts were on oneness. So in our first series, we had a discussion with Dr. Alka Pandey on oneness of art, craft, and aesthetics. And according to her, ras or essence of any art or craft with the bhav, which is expression from heart, is what is real oneness of art appreciation. And Dr. Jaspal Kalra believes that uniqueness of craft is its identity, and real craft happens when body, mind, and heart works in tandem. Now in the series 2, we had Harun Khalid and Kuljit Singh, who shared their own discoveries that Baba Nanak is a sacred man for most commoners. And that connection is beyond any faith. Baba Nanak is not a stranger, and his metaphors were a way to connect with people deeper than just the skin. Baba Nanak arrives when the feeling of the other is shed away, and that's when oneness happens. So there are many meanings of oneness which we have been hearing from various experts, people who have different faiths, people who have different thinking about what that means to them, of whether it's religious faith or whether it's spiritual understanding. Similarly, today's session is titled Experiences of Oneness Through a Docuseries, Allegory, a Tapestry of Guru Nanak's Travel. It really looks into deeper connections that Amardeep Singh found during the making of this series. It also includes his thought process on documenting the message of oneness. He calls it Noor-e-Tawheed in the very first one series, and reaching the wider audience. We will be talking to him, and we are going to get him to explain to us how he relates this oneness with what he has researched through his whole self about Nanak's journey and how he interprets it. Meanwhile, as we talk, I would request you to put down any questions that you may come across in the discussion as Amardeep ji is presenting. Put them down in the chat box of the webcast on Sangraha website or on Sangraha Sacha Sauda YouTube channel. Now, before I introduce the speaker, let's take an overview of his recent docuseries, a small snippet.
Guru Nanak, an embodiment of oneness, is a guiding force for many. Born in the 15th century, Guru Nanak glided across distant lands for over 2 decades on an altruistic pursuit. To relate with people of diverse cultures and belief systems, he engaged in philosophical and social dialogue. Through the medium of words and music, he gracefully imparted experiential insights, fearlessly challenged the binary constructs of society, and relentlessly opposed gender, religious, racial, and class inequalities. Today, in the 21st century, geopolitical restrictions and cultural mandates impose immense challenges to trace Guru Nanak's extensive travels.
My name is Amardeep Singh. I retrace the life events of Guru Nanak as narrated in the earliest historical texts.
We navigate through Punjab, the land of the 5 rivers, and travel to the Sundarbans Delta, sail across the ocean to the Sangladeep Island, scale the Himalayas to reach the region of Meru Mountain, and trudge the dunes to cross the deserts of Hejaz. Guided by Guru Nanak, who saw no stranger, our team remains internally borderless while navigating through physical borders.
गुरु नानक देव जी ने हम लोग परम पिता परमात्मा का नाम बताया। उनका नाम एक ओम, सारा संसार असत्य, परमात्मा सिर्फ एक सत्य।
He had his own message of oneness of humanity, and that cut across all regions, all caste barriers, all religions.
دا بابناکو چې په کوبل په پېښور ګرځېدو دا ارمندو کې لاړو څوک په یوازې دي څوک په بل
कोई की बात में बोले कि आप में और मेरे में क्या अंतर है
530 years ago coming, on uncharted lands. He didn't know the language, but still making such a big impact, an impact which not only had permanence, which was carried on.
वो कहते इंसानियत जिहड़ा है ना वो सब तो बड़ा मजहब है। इंसानियत का ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਪਿਆਰ ਉਹ ਪ੍ਰਚਾਰ ਬਾਬਾ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਉਹੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਬਾਬਾ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਉਹੀ ਕੀਤਾ
Narratives associated with Guru Nanak's voyages are embedded with philosophical expositions that aid the mind's alchemy. Akin to the unraveling of an allegory, anecdotes from his travels evoke insights that facilitate navigation through the mist of life. Allegory, a tapestry of Guru Nanak's travels, a 24-episode docuseries. Join me in this humble attempt to understand Guru Nanak, an embodiment of oneness.
It's an honor to speak with Amardeep ji today, and we are going to hear from his experiences on the research that he carried out. And I would welcome you to please put down your questions. That's going to make it much more interesting. My name is Nien Siao. I am in design academics. Well, I'm otherwise a commoner on this topic because for me, Guru Nanak has been a spiritual leader, but also I had no inkling of a lot of the depth of his journeys, his life experiences, which has translated into his philosophy. And that's exactly what we are going to hear today from Amardeep Singh. He's a former senior executive in the financial services and has transformed to become a visual ethnographer, author and filmmaker through his passions. This is really, really interesting what you're going to be hearing from him. And if you actually see his docuseries, you're going to really start appreciating how he has transformed himself from a corporate person into this passionate researcher and a filmmaker too, because of the finesse of the work he's presenting. Amardeep has traveled the Indus Basin from its source in Tibet to the Delta in Pakistan. He has documented its findings on the Sikh legacy remnants in the two books, Lost Heritage, The Sikh Legacy in Pakistan, and The Quest Continues, Lost Heritage, The Sikh Legacy in Pakistan. Amardeep has also produced two documentaries, Peering Soul and Peering Warrior. This is based on the spiritual and martial Sikh legacy remnants. Since 2018, Amardeep has led a team to document Guru Nanak's narrative at multi-faith sites across Asia. It'll be very interesting to hear him having some narratives, very interesting narratives on that. Guru Nanak, who was born in 1969 AD in the Indian subcontinent, was an advocate of monism, the oneness of humanity. That is another area which he's going to explain in simple words, because as far as we understand oneness, it's a really loaded word. It seems to us beyond a normal intellectual understanding. But let's have different perspectives, and one of them will be today. He traveled far and wide to engage in spiritual dialogues with saints and seekers of diverse belief systems. Allegory, a tapestry of Guru Nanak's travels, and the 24-episode docuseries is made available on the gurunanak.com. What made you choose? I'm going to ask you to begin with, welcome Amardeep ji. I want to ask you some very simple questions. What does allegory mean? What does oneness mean with your understanding of, your experience through this travel?
Well, the word allegory, a tapestry of Guru Nanak's travels, that's the name of the documentary series. And allegory is not an easy word. But then, you know what? Oneness, if you choose, it's very simple. But if you choose not to understand its simplicity, then it's very complicated, because the way we look, the way the world is going today, it's all fragmented, it's all divided. So it's a choice you make, right? So similarly, allegory actually may appear to be very a word that's not heard of so often. It appears to be a very tough word. But if you really start peeling the onion, what you realize is allegory is nothing else but revelation of a hidden meaning, revelation of a meaning inside a narrative. And if you really start peeling Guru Nanak's entire life, what he stood for, he's written only in verses, right? That's all he's given to us. He's not given the biography of his own life. He's given us his writings in the form of verses, which his adherents are taking forward to be as his learners and try and lead the life through those words. But deep inside those verses are metaphoric meanings. And somehow in our daily life, we choose to ignore to understand the deeper messages inside those metaphors. And that's what this is all about. Allegory is revealing the Guru Nanak's personality through his writings, which is the spiritual verses. The tapestry of Guru Nanak's travels is the second component of the series, which is basically his life through the journeys that he made. But I always say, tapestry, if you have to say this in Hindi, ये सफर तो एक बहाना है, क्योंकि गुरु नानक का जो फलसफा है उसको हमने समझना है और समझाना है. समझा तो हम नहीं सकते शायद, क्योंकि ये इंसान के ऊपर अपने आप उनकी अपनी जो अपनी अंदर से प्रेरणा आएगी वो उसी के से समझ सकते हैं. So this is basically just trying to understand Guru Nanak, his life, journeys, to attract the attention of the audience to really delve into the revelation of a hidden meaning.
Right. So, if you say, actually, in the beginning, when I was looking at the docuseries, I wondered, how did Guru Nanak embodied the spirit of oneness? I mean, there are many things, many transformations he underwent himself in the early part of his childhood and then as a young man. So was the embodiment meant to be in him as a the selected one? And why did he choose that? Why did he choose this path?
Well, I don't think Guru Nanak should be seen as a selected one, because when you look at his verses, you will understand what is he trying to say. He's an embodiment of humility and oneness, because what he tells us is, koi kahe bhutna, koi kahe betala. Someone calls me a demon, someone calls me out of tune, out of sync, right? That's what he's talking about himself. For us, he's an inspiration because of his humility, right? And when you look at his oneness, so he is a very humble person who's trying to give us a large repository of experiential learning. But that experiential learning, the beauty of Guru Nanak is that what the Indian philosophical system, at that time, there were two major faiths when he was born in 1469. The Indian subcontinent had the Indic people and the people who were actually coming inside and merging in at that time from Central Asian, and Islam had come inside somewhere around 880 onwards, and Punjab was seeing a confluence of both the faiths, right? But for Guru Nanak, he took the simplicity, and I think the challenge in today's world is we've not understood that simplicity of what he's trying to say. So you had on the Indian side, the Indic culture, which is represented in the form of, let's take the simplicity of that letter, what the Hindu faith says, Om. And Om is typically represented as a numeral of a representation of the Trinity of divine, the Trinity being the creator, the sustainer, and the destroyer, which is typically represented in the form of Brahma, Vishnu, or Mahesh, Shiva, right? But Guru Nanak goes on to say that I'm not disputing is there, but he puts a numeral 1 before that Onkar, right? And that simplicity of what his whole writing starts from is that numeral 1. 1 cannot be 2, it cannot be 3, it cannot be 4. 1 is 1. So you might have any kind of a manifestation. You can have multitudes of manifestations. You can define it in the form of 3 manifestations in the Indic culture as creator, sustainer, or generator, or destroyer. But he puts a numeral 1. That's the simplicity. And at the same time, when you look at the faith that was coming in from Central Asia and amalgamating in Punjab, he also had one different message for them. Because that was an Abrahamic faith. The Abrahamic faith, the Islam is Abrahamic faith, where the similarities between Judaism, Islam, and Christianity are same, that they are monotheistic faiths, where God is one, No one is denying that. But there is a Son of God, the Prophet of God, the Messenger of God, and there's a creation. And the creation cannot be God. And the God cannot be the creation. There's a distinctness inside that. And what Guru Nanak is saying, and this is where I have a big disconnect in this whole pursuit of doing this docuseries, is we'll time and again talk about the message of oneness, because oneness is not, from Guru Nanak's perspective, monotheism. It is a word which has got missed out in the entire description because we have acquired the English language. The English language, when the English came into the subcontinent, they came with the Abrahamic faith and they took Guru Nanak's philosophy and branded it as monotheism. We, without thinking, have continued to write in our books and promoted Guru Nanak as the founder of a monotheistic faith. I don't think he was finding any faith. He was on a quest. But he is talking about a word which is monism. He's not monotheistic. I mean, take that difference of monotheistic versus monism, you'll understand monism is everything is one. There is no difference between the creator and the creation. And the creation and creator is one's ecosystem. We are all interconnected. And that one ecosystem is what in the Bhakti movement or what the Sufi traditions also say of Al-Wasa. Al-Wasa is in the Sufi traditions. It is everywhere. It's present everywhere. But Kabir says, Khalak, Khalak, Khalak mein Khalik. Creator is in the creation. Creation is the creator. And that cannot be monotheism. So I think that's what I wanted us to understand. Oneness, simplicity. And I think he must have understood that from both the faiths to put the numeral 1 to dispel any questions about what the disparities and what interpretations could be, because one is one. We are all one.
Right. So Amardeep ji, I mean, listening to this, I can imagine in the time and period when this whole belief of being one with the creator and with everything around you must have been a very difficult belief to be adopted by everybody or understood by our people around. Meantime, when he was growing up as a child into a young man, what I understood was his family wanted him to be like any other. They wanted him to be worldly associated with life around him. Whereas here was Guru Nanak already placing himself into another space. So can you take us through that period when the transition was happening with him? And what were the influences which made him come up with this kind of a thinking?
Well, Guru Nanak, it's good you asked that question. I mean, Guru Nanak was born into a well-to-do family, right? I mean, his father was employed in that time. The Lodi dynasty was there, and उस टाइम की जो डायनेस्टी जो चल रही थी, लोधी डायनेस्टी थी, उसके अंदर में उस जमाने में वो उनकी पैदाइश हुई थी, तो वो तो काफी वेल एस्टैब्लिश्ड फैमिली में से पैदा हुए थे. But at that time, what happened is that he actually, if you look at it, in his early days, very early days, he's giving the signal of his father sent him to learn, the Hijazi. His father sent him to learn Sanskrit, the Landa script. Punjab में उस टाइम Landa script चलती थी, जो बाद में गुरमुखी बनी है. तो he was well educated. But बचपन से ही उनको एक ऐसा कोई एनर्जी पुल कर रही थी कि बचपन से ही वो एक रूहानियत की बात करते थे. He used to talk about spirituality. Now, this is a divine gift. At a child, if you're talking about spirituality, I mean, this is something which is coming from outside. Everyone's DNA is a bit different, right? And the DNA was there implanted inside him. But at that stage, his early life, when you look at it, when his father sends him to go and do business, he takes the money and he goes and feeds the ascetics, right? In that act, what was it? He was seeing the hunger. उनकी भूख देख रहे थे वो. जो भूख देख रहे थे तो उनको दिल से लगा कि इससे अच्छा business क्या हो सकता है? What more can be a better business than to feed the people? And that tradition continues today as a langar. But at the time when his parents were getting disturbed that this person is not actually getting into the worldly activities as they defined it, the worldly activities, because world wants us to run in a particular treadmill that the world defines. But everyone is wired differently and the world does not give space for that. In today's world also, we are told to kind of get into the best of the jobs, become an engineer, doctor, so and so forth, and keep running the treadmill. But हर किसी की एक फितरत होती है, हर किसी की एक अपनी एक वायरिंग होती है, उसको भी रिस्पेक्ट करना चाहिए. तो जब गुरु नानक के पेरेंट्स ने काफी टाइम तक देखते रहे एंड उनको लगा कि ये तो किसी साइड से वर्ल्डली मैटर्स में एंगेज नहीं हो रहे, तो उन्होंने एक डॉक्टर को बुलाया. तो जब डॉक्टर ने उनकी पल्स पकड़ी तो उनका जो रिस्पॉन्स निकला, हिज थिंग वाज, this doctor is trying to hold my vein and trying to find what's wrong with me, but he doesn't realize that is the soul which is striving, the birha, the word birha, एक किसी चीज से टूट जाना, ये तो उस चीज की एक मेरे को तलब है, उस चीज की मेरे को एक desire है, and that's what he's talking about. So from very early days he's looking at this, and then when you look at it from today's context, though you talk about the message of oneness, I think people will not be able to understand in today's context how vast he was, because we are divided today. He was born into a Khatri family, though Guru Nanak himself did not believe in any caste, and it's not right to say this caste system, but the fact was he was from a well-to-do family, right? But before he embarks on a travel, he associated himself with Bhai Mardana, who was a Muslim, a rabab player, right?
Right.
And who traveled with him for over 22 years.
Correct.
22 साल साथ में चले हैं. अब आज के ज़माने में आप जितने डिवाइड्स हो गई हैं रिलीजन्स के बीच में, आप अगर कहें कि एक दूसरे फेथ का इंसान मेरे साथ चल रहा है और हम एक मिशन लेके चल रहे हैं, इससे बड़ा वननेस का क्या एग्जाम्पल हो सकता है, राइट?
ऑल्सो मैं इंटरजेक्ट करना चाहूंगी कि जो भाई मर्दाना थे, उनके अजीज दोस्त थे, और वो एक दूसरे, उनका पूरा ट्रैवल इनके साथ रहा है, तो ये मायने रखता है कि नॉट ओनली वो लोग वो काफी सूफी कल्ट में जाते थे, कई मुसलमानों के मस्जिदों में जाके रहते थे, कांटेक्ट करते थे लोगों से, मुल्लाओं से, टू कैरी आउट अ कॉन्वर्सेशन, एंड दैट probably influenced him a lot. So could you take us through his beginning of the journey, where he started, which are the places he then went on to, और उनके क्या-क्या influences हुई because of this multicultural or multi-religious contacts?
So first and foremost, Guru Nanak की सारी journey जो है, it's not restricted just to the Islamic side. That's what needs to be understood.
Hindu as well.
Guru Nanak and Bhai Mardana, a Hindu, he was born to a Hindu family. The faith evolved and has become what we are today, but he was born into a Hindu family, right? And here's a Muslim. The two of them worked together as a beautiful team. Guru Nanak cannot be seen as separated from Bhai Mardana, right? Many a times in our own journey when we've gone around, हमको महसूस होता है कि Guru Nanak in some ways, ये अपना interpretation है सिर्फ, in some ways represents the pinnacle, एक ऊंचाई एक इंसानियत की. और जब स्टोरीज में लिखा जाता है तो भाई मर्दाना को हर टाइम दर्शाया जाता है that he is going through challenges, the worldly challenges. तो एक ह्यूमन फॉर्म और एक पिनिकल ऑफ वन, एक ऊंचाई ऑफ इंसानियत को दो शख्स यहाँ प्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं, दो इंसान प्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं. बट जब वो चले हैं साथ में, उनका सफर जो था, आपको यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड पंजाब इन दैट टाइम. There was a large influence of a tradition called, which is kind of finished off now, of the Nath Jogis. The Nath Jogis were very well stretched from Afghanistan, India, Pakistan, and up till Nepal, whose adherents, the ones who used to commit themselves to the faith, and they would be piercing their ears. उनको कहते थे कनफट्टा जोगी. अब गुरु नानक की डायलॉग्स जो होती हैं कनफट्टे जोगियों के साथ बहुत होती हैं, एंड इन दैट there's an entire section called Siddh Ghost. Siddh Ghost जो रिद्धि सिद्धि कमान, miraculous powers कमान, जो जिनके पास आ जाते थे, and they were a lot of them were the adherents of the Nath tradition. तो एक जगह वो हैं, दूसरी जगह में वो तिब्बत की तरफ जाते हैं, वहां पे भी नाथ जोगियों से मिलते हैं, बोधियों से मिलते हैं, right? The followers of Buddhist faith. He goes to Sri Lanka, he has an interaction with the Sangh Raja. He goes to Bodh Gaya, he has the interaction with the head priest of the Mahabodhi temple, right? He goes to Sufi sites, Makkah, Medina जाते हैं, बगदाद में जाते हैं, then he goes to Mashhad, Iran में, Imam Ali Raza की site पे जाते हैं. So when you look at this whole landscape, question ये आता है, ये this is not about Hindu or Muslim or Nath Jogi or a Buddhist. This is about Guru Nanak's quest to go to places where spiritualists would congregate. जहाँ पे जो रूहानियत की बात करने वाले जो लोग आते थे, उनके साथ dialogue करने के लिए वो जाते थे. They would go to actually have dialogues with them. And for that, then there is no boundary of faith, because then they would cut across all faiths and go in there. So Guru Nanak has been to 9 countries as per the oldest documented traditions. We are not talking about the modern narrative. Modern narratives में तो Guru Nanak को हर दूसरे तीसरे जगह में भेजा जा रहा है. मैं ये कह रहा हूँ भेजा जा रहा है because आज के modern historians Guru Nanak ने तो अपनी जिंदगी के बारे में कुछ लिखा ही नहीं. He wrote nothing about his life. He only wrote about how he could guide, his verses could guide someone to live his life, right? So whatever traditions we've got from the people, the adherents of faith who have written it after his life. तो 65 years से लेके जो 150 साल तक की जो ट्रेडिशन लिखे गए थे, वही हमारे पास अर्लीस्ट टेक्स्ट हैं. एंड उनको हम अगर लेते हैं, so we find from that repository of writings that he has traveled to 9 countries, and these 9 countries are basically India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Tibet, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. Now, in these 9 countries, you will find literally any important site of that geography's faith at that time, they have visited it. So they were cutting across faiths. They were not adherents of any faiths. They were, as I say, Nanak's one verse is very important to understand out here. He himself says, Jab lag duniya rahiye Nanak, kich kahiye, kich suniye. He says, till such time you are there in this world, Guru Nanak says, say something and absorb something. This is the process of giving and taking. And in his own words, many a times as we have gone through this journey, we have come to realize we as adherents of Guru Nanak might be thinking that he's only giving. But there is no giving without taking, without absorbing. It's a process, it's a quest. And we cannot fail to understand that he was on a quest, he was absorbing and he was disseminating. Nanak, jab lag duniya rahiye Nanak, kich kahiye kich suniye. And that encompasses it. That's what the oneness is.
Correct. So, अमरदीप जी, ये जब ये इतने कंट्रीज में गए तो उनको जरूर कुछ चैलेंजेस तो हुई होंगी इन टर्म्स ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन हो रहा है नहीं हो रहा है, समझ है, बिलीव्स अलग हैं. तो व्हाट डू यू थिंक वर द काइंड ऑफ चैलेंजेस ही फेस्ड as he was moving from one country to the other? How did he assimilate it into one understanding? So आपको जो भी whatever is what you have found out, please help us understand that.
So I think, yeah, so this is something that a lot of people grapple with, and that's what I said just a while back, because his father, Mehta Kalu, who was well established, probably planted the best seed that any parent could plant, which is education, right? Because उनके text में लिखा हुआ आता है कि बड़े young age में he had mastered Hijazi. हिजाजी क्या है? हिजाज लैंग्वेज है जो मिडिल ईस्ट की जो खुरासान का इलाका, जहां से हिजाज, जो अरबिक, जिसमें कुरान लिखी गई है, कुरान शरीफ, राइट? He had mastered that language. He had mastered the language of Sanskrit, which is the language of the Indic culture. He had well versed himself with the Landa script. तो ये 3 लैंग्वेजेस अगर आपके पास आ गई तो वो तो कोई अमेरिका तो नहीं जा रहे थे ना, वो कोई यूरोप तो नहीं जा रहे थे ना. सो देयर वाज नो क्वेश्चन ऑफ इंग्लिश. जिस रीजन में वो ऑपरेट कर रहे थे, संस्कृत, लंडा स्क्रिप्ट जो पंजाब की स्क्रिप्ट थी, आज तो गुरमुखी हम बोलते हैं, बट दैट टाइम इट वाज लंडा स्क्रिप्ट, राइट? लंडा, संस्कृत एंड एज वेल एज हिजाजी. I think he had the foundation for to be able to navigate through that entire 9-country landscape and still be able to communicate. That's one. दूसरी बात है, what you need to realize when these people who are born with a certain spiritual disposition, they cut through the boundaries of words. They cut through the boundaries of words. See, at the time of Guru Nanak, and maybe about 250 to 300 years before him, what had started in India was what we call as the Bhakti movement. And similarly, on the parallel side, the Islam that came in had started amalgamating in India, and उसकी जो shape बन रही थी उस time तक had turned into Sufism. तो Sufism एक भक्ति movement ही है, जिसमें आप गा के जब वो रूहानियत को पा रहे हैं आप. तो the people of the Indian tradition were doing the Bhakti movement. The Sufis from the Islamic tradition were doing the same thing, right? Now, when you look at the Sufis and the Bhakti movement adherents, whether it be Baba Farid in Pakpatan in Pakistan, whose site Guru Nanak went to, or it be Jaidev, and Baba Farid was 250 years before Guru Nanak, or Guru Nanak has assimilated a lot of writings of the Indian tradition, like Jaidev, Bhagat Jaidev from Bengal, who was 200 plus years before him. Namdev in Maharashtra, 200 years before him. Kabir from the UP belt, he was supposed to be his contemporary, right? तो ये जो सारे जो थे spiritualists, इनकी एक चीज common होती है, and that commonality is that they are talking in the language जो हम कहेंगे संतों की भाषा. संतों की भाषा जब होती है, there is no definition of the language. Now, when we read Guru Nanak's verses today, when the language appears to be tough, I always say to the people that you have to make an attempt to start reading it, because when you start reading it, slowly when you'll keep reading it, your own doors will one day open up, and then the words will lose the geographic meaning. Because Guru Nanak is writing in Persian, he's writing in Maharashtrian, he's writing in Bengali language, he's writing in Punjabi, he's writing in so many languages, right? How does that assimilate? That's the amalgamation of what you call as Sant Bhasha. Kabir is doing the same thing. So these saints were cutting across boundaries. That ability we have lost today. We may think that we are masters of English or Hindi or Urdu and so on and so forth. You know what? But we have ingrained our capability to operate only in one narrow lane. For these spiritualists, they were cutting across the lanes. रूहानियत की बात में कोई लैंग्वेज की बैरियर नहीं आ सकती, and that's the oneness, and that's how he was traveling across the countries, because his foundation was strong. His ability to assimilate, when you have the mindset किछ कहिए किछ सुनिए, that means you are equally hearing and not only imparting. And when you start hearing, you will also pick up things very fast, and I think that's the key out here.
So एक विचार आता है कि जब वो अलग धर्मों के लोगों से मिल रहे हैं और उनका बिलीफ जो शायद अलग हो सकता है, how do you think any conflict must have appeared in places which I believe may have happened, but we don't know? Did you come across any such narrative as to how did he deal with that? And this is across so many religions. It's not just one where you have lifetime to, figure it out and then assimilate that. So
it's a very good question you asked, and I'm glad you asked this question, because we will address it at some point of time in the documentary series.
Right.
जिसको समझना होएगा उसको समझना पड़ेगा. उसको समझने के लिए हमने अपनी तरफ से उस एंगल को प्रोजेक्ट कर दिया है. The reason I'm saying this is, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट तब होता है जब आपको किसी के ऊपर कुछ चीज थोपनी है, किसी के ऊपर कुछ चीज दबानी है, तब कॉन्फ्लिक्ट आता है. जब गुरु नानक का प्रिंसिपल ही है कि हियर एंड इम्पार्ट, then there can be no conflict. Because if you don't listen, how will you then give? If you don't seek, how will you impart? Right? So it's a two-way process. If you start hearing, you've actually subdued the entire conflict energy. Now, my personal view is that the adherents of any faith in the process of glorification of their prophets or their leaders make narratives which lose this essence. वो जो बुनियाद की बात है, जो नींव की बात है, उसको भूल जाते हैं जो लेखक बाद में लिखते हैं. मैं ये कहना चाहता हूं कि अगर गुरु नानक का जो लिखा हुआ है उसी सोर्स से हम इसको इस क्वेश्चन को अंडरस्टैंड करने की कोशिश करें, जिसको हम अटेम्प्ट भी करेंगे तिब्बत की जर्नी में, जब हम कैलाश मानसरोवर जाएंगे उस जगह में हम एक्चुअली उस चीज को प्रेजेंट भी करेंगे, बट इतने ओपनली मैं नहीं बोलूंगा, जिसको समझना होगा वो समझ जाएगा उस एपिसोड में। दिस इज एपिसोड नंबर 18 जब वो रिलीज होगी। अक्सर जितने मैं जब बचपन से गुरु नानक के बारे में पढ़ता था, तो कितनी किताबों में हमारे राइटर्स एक कॉन्फ्लिक्ट को प्रेजेंट करते हैं। इट्स अ one upmanship that he was asked this and he said something and he proved himself and therefore he came out supreme. But that's not what Guru Nanak is doing. And the example of that is in Tibet at the Kailash Mansarovar, where the Siddh ghost, the dialogue with the Nath Jogis, the Siddhas happens. His first opening verse is about the two sides. It's not even two sides. He meets the Siddhas and both of them decide to have a discourse. Not a conflict, kind of a debate, a discourse. There's a lot of difference between discourse and a debate. Debate word ही होता है कि मैं कौन जीतेगा इसके एंड में. Discourse तो होता है कि हम साथ में बैठ के बात करेंगे. They have a discourse. And when they have a discourse, as per the traditions that time, दो साइड पे लोग बैठते थे. And he starts by saying that we bow in front of each other. That's how he starts his Siddh Ghost. अगर आपने सिर किसी के आगे रख दिया, तो आपने ईगो को आपने पहले सबमिट कर दिया बिफोर द डायलॉग. तो उसके बाद तो जो भी कुछ हुआ उसमें तो हम उस चीज को समझने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं उनके डायलॉग के थ्रू. उन्होंने अपने विचार रखे, उन्होंने अपने पॉइंट ऑफ व्यूज रखे, इन्होंने अपने पॉइंट ऑफ व्यूज रखे. आई डोंट सी दैट एज अ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, बिकॉज वो डिस्कोर्स से पहले ही आपने अपना सिर झुका दिया, उन्होंने भी झुका दिया, आपने भी झुका दिया. तो इसमें कॉन्फ्लिक्ट की क्या बात रहती है? आज के मॉडर्न राइटर्स में वांट टू प्रोजेक्ट इट एज अ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट एंड अ विनिंग. देयर इज नथिंग एज अ विनिंग. इफ वन लूजेस इन द मैसेज ऑफ वननेस, then the one who has won has not won because the entire ecosystem is lost.
Correct. So अब बात करते हैं अमरदीप जी on his friendship with Bhai Mardana and their descendants and the integration of music in Guru Nanak's life. Could you throw a little light on that, because your documentary shows very beautifully how he orders an instrument called rebab and which he gifts to some other religious person, and so there's a whole lot of musical component in the way they were dealing, and perhaps that became a communication tool too. So could you talk to us a little bit about that?
So yeah, I mean, so as I said earlier also, that Guru Nanak was born in a period when there was a Bhakti and Sufi movement revival happening in the subcontinent, right? Islam came in and merged in the Indian culture at the time when Bhakti was evolving. But before Bhakti came into the Indic society itself, don't forget, कि Indian philosophy जो है, जिसको हम दर्शन शास्त्र कहते हैं, छह philosophies थे. लोग उस philosophy में काफी चीजें आपकी माइंड से ही बातें होती हैं, राइट? जब आप माइंड को हटा देते हैं और एक सोल से बात करने लगते हैं, तो योर सोल स्टार्ट सिंगिंग, राइट? And that's what the Bhakti movement came in, and even when Islam came in, transformed into Sufism and became what we see as the collective consciousness building in the form of singing. Now, Guru Nanak was born in that period of time. His lifelong companion that he chose was a musician, Bhai Mardana. And as they traveled around the world, it was a conscious choice, I think, he made, that he chose a lifelong companion to be a rabab player. 22 years they traveled together, right? And as they traveled to the places of different faiths, music was their way to communicate, right? And that music resulted in Guru Nanak writing in over 30 rags, about 37 rags, because I'm saying 37 because he took combination of certain principal rags and he combined them with certain rags. One of the beautiful things I'll tell you, and it'll come out in probably in the episode 13 or 14 when he goes to South India. So there is a Ramkali rag, which is the tradition from North and South, but Ramkali, he was coming from Punjab, so Ramkali is a well-established rag of the Indian system. But when he goes to South India, the rag that he writes in is Ramkali Dakhni. Dakhni is south. So he takes the Ramkali and he transforms it to bring in the elements of the South Indian Ramkali, and that when it comes together results in a music which he gives at that point of time with a verse, right? तो मेरे कहने का मतलब ये है कि म्यूजिक उनकी पूरी लाइफ का एक बहुत बड़ा कंपोनेंट है, और जब म्यूजिक उनका सबसे इतना बड़ा कंपोनेंट है तो हमारी इस पूरी डॉक्यू सीरीज में म्यूजिक इज द सोल ऑफ द इंटायर डॉक्यू सीरीज. We have more than 300 odd verses of Guru Nanak, and they are in the form of two components. एक तो गुरु नानक के जो documented text के through, the earliest documented text के through, what is he saying at each site? अगर वो मक्का में है तो मक्का में उन्होंने क्या कहा, वो शब्द को एक हम मेल वॉइस के थ्रू सिंग कर रहे हैं एक रबाब के साथ. We are not singing it in the form of the typical Gurdwara singing today, because in the Gurdwaras, if you go, you'll find three people sitting down, one with a harmonium, one with a tabla, and one person singing. Well, when Guru Nanak was traveling, there was no harmonium. Harmonium only came in from the organ. The British, when they came into India, the Europeans, they took the organ and they adapted it for spreading the Christianity, and they made it into what we acquired very quickly as a harmonium. But Guru Nanak was not traveling with that. He was traveling with a rabab, with his companion Bhai Mardana playing the rabab, and there was no percussion instrument. There was no tabla when they were taking it. So we have tried to be as close to the reality by saying कि जैसे वो लोग चले होंगे, हमको तो पता नहीं वो कैसे चले, लेकिन जो उन्होंने रागों में लिखा है और हमें पता है कि दो शख्स चल रहे हैं, तो जैसे वो चले हैं उस म्यूजिक को हम उसी तरीके से बांधे. तो हमने एक म्यूजिक में एक बहुत सिंप्लिसिटी रखी है, बट उन रागों को फॉलो करके जिस राग में लिखा है उस राग से हम उस म्यूजिक की इमोशंस को भी निकाल रहे हैं इस डॉक्यू सीरीज में. और दूसरी बात है कि जब मैं एज अ होस्ट चल रहा हूं गुरु नानक के सफर पे, so then what's happening is my soul after 550 years going on his path is also going through a transformation, is also asking questions, and is also on its own journey. तो जब वो चीजें ऑब्जर्व करती है तो मेरे माइंड में भी क्वेश्चंस आते हैं, ऑब्जर्वेशंस आते हैं, एंड उनका आंसर, मैं कोई प्रीचर नहीं हूं, आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू टेल यू व्हाट्स राइट और रॉन्ग, आई एम एन एथनोग्राफर. मैं सिर्फ ऑब्जर्व करता हूं, जो सही है उसको बस रिपोर्ट कर रहा हूं, लेकिन मेरी जो सोल की जो एक सिचुएशन है उसको जब मैं प्रेजेंट कर रहा हूं, तो इस डॉक्यू सीरीज में हमने एक फीमेल की वॉइस यूज की है. एंड द वननेस मैसेज इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट आउट हियर, दैट आवर सिंगर इज अ सिख फ्रॉम पंजाब. The lady who's representing my soul, because my own questions come in, I'm not standing and giving and preaching there, but my soul hears back from a female voice singing the Guru Nanak's verse as an answer, and the answer lies inside that, what my soul is seeking for. That is sung in a female voice, and it's sung in the rag that Guru Nanak wrote, and from that we are trying to understand the contemporary situation. जो आज मैं देख रहा हूँ, जिसको मैं समझने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ, मैं उसको उस गुरु नानक के वर्स के थ्रू समझता हूँ, और वो आवाज जो है, वो फीमेल की आवाज मेरी एक सोल को, आत्मा को रिप्रेजेंट कर रही है, बिकॉज सूफी ट्रेडिशन में, भक्ति ट्रेडिशन में सोल को एक फेमिनिन एस्पेक्ट माना गया है. तो so she represents, and the beauty out here of oneness is that she's a lady from Pakistan, Salima Khwaja, and we have taken her to represent my soul's voice. And then there's a huge component of music inside this, because Guru Nanak's representation is also in the form of the fact that in the Indian subcontinent, when he traveled from Bengal to Pakistan to South India, he collated the verses of more than 14 saints like Jaydev, Namdev, Baba Farid, and so on and so forth, Kabir. In the Sikh tradition, the largest repository of Kabir's writings is there in the Guru Granth Sahib.
Right.
When he took all this, then we are actually making deviations in our travels and also visiting these contemporaries or the saints who were before him, whose writings Guru Nanak has collated. और जब उनकी जगहों में जाते हैं तो हम उनकी भी वॉइस को रिप्रेजेंटेशन दे रहे हैं, बिकॉज एक पैरेलल जर्नी चल रही है इन सेंट्स की, इनके साथ, गुरु नानक के साथ, फिलोसॉफिकली. तो उसको एक हिंदू सिंगर जो B.S. नारंग जी हैं, he is no more. He did the last recording for this docu-series, and a few weeks later he passed away, and he's a Hindu singer. So what better message of oneness can you have in this time? A Hindu, a Muslim, a Sikh has sung the entire 300 odd verses of Guru Nanak in this documentary series of 24 episodes.
It's fantastic to hear the music in your the few docuseries that have been uploaded. And I wanted to check, sorry about that. How about Bhai Mardana's descendants? There's a small segment about it, and I thought it was really interesting to know that in the earlier times, there were the Muslims and there were the Sikh who would be singing in the Gurdwaras, but and they were very well fated for it. Now, what is the situation, and what has what is happening right now? Could you help us understand, since you travel to the places now, and there were certain traditions which were followed earlier.
So before I answer the question on the traditions, I want to make the philosophy of Guru Nanak very clear, so that then we try and understand this tradition. Because time results in a lot of fractures. And before we go to the fractures, we need to understand how the body was before that, before it got fractured, right? So Guru Nanak, when he emerges from the river Bain in Sultanpur Lodhi, what a lot of people or writers write as a moment of his revelation. Well, there's no revelation. This is not an Abrahamic concept. He was on a journey. He, yes, emerges from the Bain River, and he says something which the modern authors have missed out. I feel so. Because all the old texts write about he emerged from the Bain River and he proclaimed, "Na ko Hindu, na Musalman." All right. If you understand the essence of it, what he's saying is humanity is first. There is no Hindu or Muslim. I understand the meaning, but were these his words? Because that you don't find. If you have to actually anchor back to what Guru Nanak has written in the verses that he has written in the Guru Granth Sahib, and उसमें ऐसा कोई भी शब्द नहीं आता जिसमें वो कहते हैं कि ना को हिंदू ना मुसलमान. वहां ये जरूर आता है, वो कहते हैं एको धर्म दृढ़ सच कोई. कहते हैं जो righteousness is the only spiritual tradition, or only tradition which is the truth, is the only tradition. That's what that matters. And when you follow on the truth, then how can you have divisions between people because of the faith and the other boundaries that we have created? That's Guru Nanak's philosophy. Very strong advocate of that. When he writes the number 1. Now, what therefore happens is, you got to keep in mind, boundaries of any faith get constructed over a period of time by the adherents of the faiths. अब इसमें मैं कोई जजमेंट नहीं दे रहा हूं कि राइट और रॉन्ग क्या हुआ है. एक एवोल्यूशन ऑफ हिस्ट्री है, वो चीज बन गई है, राइट? बट मुझे ये पता है मेरी एक्सटेंसिव ट्रैवल्स की वजह से, because I have traveled with over 126 cities and villages in Pakistan along the Indus region, and I've done these 2 books, जिसके अंदर मैंने एक नानक पंथी ट्रेडिशन के बारे में 110 पेजेस में राइटिंग्स रखी हैं, जो ट्रेडिशन वहां रह गए हैं. जब उनको मैं जाके देखता हूं तो वहां पर आपने एक मुस्लिम ट्रेडिशन की बात करी है, मैं उस पॉइंट पे आ रहा हूं, इसको थोड़ा क्लैरिफाई करके. दिस वाज नॉट अबाउट मुस्लिम्स एंड सिख्स, दिस वाज आल्सो अबाउट हिंदू, मुस्लिम, सिख, द पीपल ऑफ द इंडस रीजन from Kashmir till the Sindh, Balochistan, including Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Afghanistan and Punjab, जहां पे जो भी हिंदू होएगा या सिख होएगा या lot of Muslim also would have an affinity for Guru Nanak. Guru Nanak was intertwined inside that whole belt. Until about 100 years back, equally, a Santosh Kumar had the full right to be singing Guru Nanak's verses inside a Gurdwara. And that tradition is alive. You go to Balochistan, you go to Sindh in Pakistan, there are Gurdwaras where only Santosh Kumars and Wadi Lals and Suresh Lals and those are the people doing it. But in our definition today, we are saying only XYZ can do Kirtan. Now, with that as a background, when we look at the fracture point in 1947, what has happened is that the partition of the Indian subcontinent based on this Radcliffe line actually was not the division of India. It was a division of an Indus culture, I always call it. The Indus region was fractured, and that fracturing of the Indus region, what it has done is disperse the people into different regions. I'm sitting in Singapore probably because what happened in 1947, where my parents landed because of forced migration into UP, and from there I found myself elsewhere. Probably we people wouldn't have migrated. We would have been still around in a cultural environment of the Indus region. And that dispersal has caused redefinition of the boundaries of who you are, what's right, what's wrong. That's just an evolution. I can't pass a judgment on that. Unfortunately, as a part of that, the Rababi tradition, which were the descendants of Bhai Mardana, who were the Muslim bards who would sing inside the Gurdwara. In fact, in the episode 2, on the second half, I have interviewed the descendants of the Rababi tradition yet in Pakistan, who fondly recall through the pictures of their ancestors that this person was singing at the Seesganj Gurdwara, at the Rakabganj Gurdwara in Delhi, at the Golden Temple in Amritsar. That was and Goindwal Sahib, that was a live tradition. No one said that because of your faith you can't sing.
Right.
That tradition today, unfortunately, in my journeys on Guru Nanak's footsteps, I feel the pain has been fragmented, has been fractured. It's not just today we have defined who can sing Guru Nanak's verses on the stage.
That's true.
Who are we to decide? I always ask this question. And therefore, the medium of Docuseries inside this is we are just reporting and we are bringing it together irrespective of what faith you are. In many ways, what we are trying to do is unbox Guru Nanak.
Right.
Because that's the need of the hour. We need to go back to the understanding Guru Nanak through his verses, through his philosophy. And when you do that, you will understand he's beyond boundaries which we have created.
I can see, Amardeep ji, you have really been impacted by this travel, this experience of travel. Tell us about the journey itself, your journey. Whom did you go with? Where all did you go? Why did you select to go to certain places? Did you have certain different experiences which you could share with us? We'd love to hear that.
Oh, that's a very loaded question in many parts that are coming together. So let me try.
Because this is almost really the end, and we cannot do without knowing what you underwent, and we'd love to hear that.
So let me just give a small background, and then you can probably break that question if you still don't get answer, because you asked me about 3-4 questions in that one loaded question. So I'll try and give a part of it, and then you ask me if you still want something else, right? Well, my journey is a journey of quest. मैं तो एक कॉर्पोरेट एग्जीक्यूटिव था, मैं कोई हिस्टोरियन नहीं पढ़ा हूँ, मैं एक इंजीनियर हूँ, MBA हूँ, 25 साल फाइनेंशियल इंडस्ट्री में काम किया है. ये तो मेरी जिंदगी का एक ऐसा मौका आया, एक टर्न आया जिसमें मैं चल पड़ा 2014 में एक पर्सनल क्वेस्ट, एक पर्सनल खोज करने के लिए पाकिस्तान चला गया मैं. और जब मैं वापस आया तो जितनी चीजें मैंने देखी थी 30 साल से मैं जो पढ़ रहा था, एक एनर्जी ने मेरे लिए वो सारे दरवाजे खोल दिए. जब वो दरवाजे खुल गए, सो आई केम बैक एंड आई फेल्ट आई नीड टू डॉक्यूमेंट इट. वो करते करते 4 साल में मैंने 2 बुक्स कर दी, जिसमें 126 शहर और गांव, 126 cities and villages from Baltistan, Kashmir, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Punjab, Sindh and Balochistan में I documented the remnants of the Sikh legacy in Pakistan. Those 2 books became the foundation. अगर वो 2 किताबें मैं नहीं करता, तो ये जो गुरु नानक ट्रैवल्स प्रोजेक्ट है ये कभी हो ही नहीं सकता था, because I am operating in a space where going there is very tough. That's the space that I'm operating in, right? Now, I'm not the one who's interested in only Nankana Sahib, Panja Sahib, Kartarpur Sahib, because the world is focused on that. I'm interested in understanding एक legacy थी, एक विरासत थी, वो सारी विरासत खत्म हो गई, तो उसको अंडरस्टैंड करने के लिए एक माइंडसेट दूसरा चाहिए होता है. तो जब वो मैंने कर लिया, एक बेसलाइन बन गया, तो 2018 में I asked myself this question कि Guru Nanak's journeys have always fascinated me, because to me these are not physical journeys. The learnings inside those journeys, the experiential insights, जो अगर इंसान अपना दिमाग खोल के पढ़ेगा और उन वर्सेस को समझने की कोशिश करेगा, there are deep philosophical message inside it. It's not a physical journey. It's not like a travel that a person today will go and just tour around the world and make a blog and post a vlog or something. They are not doing that. Their travels are not about which place he's going in. He's writing an experiential wisdom out there. So to understand that experiential wisdom, my question was, the world has made documentaries on Alexander the Great. And what is his greatness? Killing people, acquiring territories, and we call him as Alexander the Great. Excuse me? Columbus, who goes on a personal quest and goes and personal quest to find India, and he lands up in a place that later on becomes America, right? What's his greatness?
True.
He was on a personal quest. Marco Polo was on his personal quest. And here's a person, Guru Nanak, who traveled so far and wide for the message of oneness. Doesn't that deserve to be documented and put forward? That's what led us to this question कि वो जो मैंने किताबें की थी पाकिस्तान के डोमेन में, मुझे पता था क्या challenges हैं इसमें, क्या financial challenges को overcome करके, क्या उन सरहदों को पार करके मैं उन जगहों पे जाके और सरहद पार कर भी जाऊंगा, क्या मैं उन sites तक पहुंच सकता हूं, those multi-faith sites, the shrines, because every shrine today, let's take in India, if you go to Jagannath temple, you may go into the Jagannath temple, but can you take a camera inside Jagannath temple? Every place is barricaded, and you go into these places of other faiths in different countries. How will you get inside them? But yet the story must be told. So we asked the divine for a grace. We said, allow us to do this. Because without your enabling it, nothing's going to happen. I can come up with the best of the plans. And therefore, in just a flat 18 months, me and my wife led this. So there was an equal partnership of my wife inside this. Both of us traveled across the world with this team, which comprised of people from India, from Pakistan. In the Islamic countries, we took a Pakistani team. In the Indian context, we took the Indian team. But we had to get the job. We are not aligned from a political perspective on any side. Our loyalty is with Guru Nanak's narrative.
Correct.
Right? And for us, the talent, the humans, the problem solving across this complex divided geography was the main thing. I think I'll answer the last piece. I still remember the question you asked about our personal journey, right? So this journey was very, very tough. If anyone, I think what you were trying to say is ask, if I was to reword that, I think what you're trying to ask is what has been our journey like on this path. I think you're talking more from an internal journey, right?
Yes.
Is that what
Yes.
And this is where I would say, Nien, की reality अगर बात करें, मैं कोई words को mince नहीं करता. मैं words on the face value बोल रहा हूँ कि जब इतना बड़ा project आप कर रहे हो, आप कोई ये National Geographic type of project है ये. इसकी quality अगर आप देखेंगे तो it's a National Geographic type of series, right? Correct. अगर इसकी quality of production देखें जो हमने 3 साल में किया है, 1.5 साल की journey across 9 countries, और इसमें डिवाइन इंटरवेंशन है, रूहानियत की एक रूह है इसके अंदर कि अगर जो आपकी पूरी फिल्मिंग जब दुनिया बंद हो रही है कोरोना की वजह से अप्रैल 2020 में आपकी पूरी फिल्मिंग कंप्लीट हो जाती है, इज इट अ डिवाइन प्लान? बिकॉज उसके बाद तो आपने बैठ के जो आपके पास 50 टेराबाइट्स ऑफ डेटा आपने 18 महीने में जो फिल्म किया था उसको आपने सीक्वेंशली स्टिच करना है. यू हैव टू स्टिच इट एंड प्रेजेंट इट टू द वर्ल्ड इन दिस फॉर्म ऑफ अ स्टोरी. It's a very, very complicated task. It needs a lot of money. And we have operated on a very thin budget. But when you're on the field, मेरे पास कोई पैसा, मैं फंड रेजिंग करके काम कर रहा हूँ, सिर्फ एक पैशन है. लेकिन आपके पास काफी टाइम आता है कि आपकी बैलेंस शीट रेड में चली जाती है. आप एक कोई कंट्री में बैठे हैं, आपके पास सडनली पैसे नेगेटिव हो गए. अब आपने एक टीम को चलाना है. टीम तो आपके साथ बड़ी पैशनेट टीम है, लेकिन सब लोग उनको भी घर चलाने हैं, उनको अपनी रोजी रोटी करनी है. Right? You've got a problem of financials. You got to meander through various sites, geographies, visas. How will you get inside Afghanistan? How will you get inside Tibet and say, I'm going to film out here?
Correct.
It's a very complicated problem. And then when you get there, how will you get inside the sites? And when a lot of these countries, like in Iran, as a foreigner, it's an isolated country. You're not allowed to film there. Now, once you've gotten there will be intelligence all over around you. And then there are high altitude risks. Our cameraman team in Tibet at the height of 20,000 feet is holding a big camera and the oxygen is depleting, right? That person can't breathe. You've got thousands of problems from intelligence to health to financial to so on and so forth. What I'm trying to say is, Nien, if you are in my position, do you think there is any scope for any personal development inside this spiritually? No. There is a problem solving that's happening out here. And this is where I would like to end the message of oneness. Right. If we have chosen to take this path, it's for our collective consciousness. And if I can throw something out of which we all can learn something out of this series, and you can grow out of it, and you can absorb something, I have grown out of it.
Thank you, Amardeep ji. I can see that आपका अभी भी बहुत passion जारी है, or you are going to be looking at finishing the docuseries, and I know you've set very tough deadlines for yourself, so we are going to look forward to that. I would encourage all of the participants today to please go on the gurunanak.com and start looking through the series. They are very well made. They are very simple to understand. And for people who have just come into the story of Guru Nanak, here is one perspective from Amardeep Singh. Now, I want to thank you. There were a few questions which I have tried to, sort of collate it together, asked you in a loaded manner. Some of them are very specific. Would you like to take one at least?
I'm happy to take that, but I just want to interject once again out here. The website, I want to just be very clear. It's the Guru Nanak as one word, THE, and then Guru Nanak as one word, because what typically happens is people write just Guru Nanak. Interestingly, that domain is empty. No one has got anything on that domain name. And that domain name was being sold at 15 lakhs. We would have loved to have that domain name to put this series, but I didn't have the money to give and waste in getting a name. So all we did was to add the before that. And we are fine because Guru Nanak is only one, and therefore the Guru Nanak is fine.
So here's the spirit of oneness as well.
Yeah.
Okay, the question is, how difficult was it to interact with people of different faith in different countries while shooting for the docuseries? So as you narrated the story of Guru Nanak facing that, how was it for you?
I say this, I worked 25 years in the corporate world. And we used to make 5-year plans, 1-year plans, 1-month plan. कभी कुछ नहीं डिलीवर करते थे, सिर्फ प्लान बनाते थे. ये कॉर्पोरेट जगत है.
आप बड़ा स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड बोल दिए.
मैं स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड बोल रहा हूँ. मैंने टीम्स लीड की हैं. I've led the Asia Pacific region in American Express. The fact is, corporate world में plans बनाए जाते हैं और डिलीवरी कम होती है. और ये जो जगत है ना जिसमें मैं काम कर रहा हूँ पिछले 7 साल से, इसमें एक ख्याल आता है. और ख्याल पता चलते चलते it just manifests into something else, right? Or before you can even realize, the products get delivered. So there are no plans being made. It's just passion and in the moment, living the moment. मैंने पाकिस्तान कोई किताब लिखने के लिए सफर नहीं किया था. किताबें बन गई. मैंने कभी नहीं सोचा था ये डॉक्यूमेंट्री हो पाएगी. एक सफर में मैंने कहा, आप the divine, you help me, take me across this again. What I'm trying to say is I've learned one thing in this entire journey. The only key to success is the following. The establishment has its own views. The establishment will pose barriers for you. Establishment has to be meandered. Financial aspects have to be meandered. वो सब तो करना ही पड़ेगा. उसमें तो आपको अपना दीवार से सिर मार के या तो दीवार टूटेगी या आपका सिर टूटेगा. Right? So those are only two things. But काम जो grassroots levels पे होता है ना, अगर human to human interaction नहीं हुआ ना, at the most beneficial level, at the most integrated level, तो कुछ भी काम नहीं हो सकता. और उसके लिए the most important principle of life is, as you think, so you attract. And therefore, when I go onto the field, it is not that I have got an ill feeling for anyone. I'm only every day in the morning, I'm just thinking how to get there. I'm just keeping the right energy around me. I'm just being good to people. And in return, at every place, every situation, people have helped us. And with that, having said, I'll tell you one story and you'll understand this. And there are many stories we have inside this. One day we will talk about the stories. If my breath permits, after all these big tasks, I will write something. But till then, these stories are with me, right? But मैं आपको एक बात बताता हूँ. अफगानिस्तान में हम गजनी पहुंच गए और गजनी में हम फिल्मिंग कर रहे थे. वहां महमूद गजनी के 2 टावर्स बने हुए हैं. Mahmud Ghazni who had come into India. There are 2 towers which are built in his honor. और 1000 साल से पुराने 700-800 साल पुराने टावर्स होंगे. तो हमने अब वहां पे एक टाइम था, इतनी बड़ी कम्युनिटी थी सिख और हिंदुओं की. जितना आप वेस्ट में जाएंगे ना, there is no division as Sikh and Hindu. They can be adherents of the Gita, but Nanak is intertwined inside them. A Sikh will be an adherent of Guru Nanak, but also has an equal respect for the others out there. This is the beauty of the Indus belt. the more you move away from the current Punjab, where you have defined, and I sometimes laugh it out when in our own Sikh temples, when they're teaching kids, they try and tell them, where are the Sikhs from? The most fundamental question. All our books try and say they are from Punjab, and they show East Punjab. I say, you just missed the whole plot. We are the people of the Indus region, which is spreading from Afghanistan till the Gangetic belt, and you narrowed it down to there. So that's the vision that's got constricted to. So the point I'm trying to say is, when you reach the place like Ghazni and you're filming, there's a large community till at the time of Russian invasion, and which has reduced to, when we went in April 2019, had reduced to just a handful of numbers, right? And in that scenario, a handful of numbers, there are yet 3 gurdwaras there, very well maintained. But the money is coming from the people who are sitting abroad, and they are supporting it. But there are only a handful of people sitting there. And we wanted to get the shot of Ghazni, and you'll find it in that episode when we will go into Afghanistan. That's episode number 22. You'll find it in there. We will have this aerial view of Ghazni city. We had to fly our drone, and we went outside the Ghazni city and flew our drone from the premises of the Gurdwara, which was locked, but we were standing outside. But very well maintained Gurdwara, but it was locked. There's no one there to actually take care of it. We were standing outside. We flew the drone. The drone went inside, and suddenly our drone operator Salman Alam Khan, who was from Lahore, he says, "Amardeep Sahab, ye to niche se AK-47 leke aa gaye." Right. So I looked at it, and they had the AK-47 pointed at our drone, and they started firing. Right. And in that moment, you turned the drone back and you started getting it towards. It was our drone can go up to 1.5 kilometers, and we were at 1 kilometer, and we're trying to get it back. And suddenly we find the drones being chased with this 2 jeeps filled with people sitting with their Pathani suits and AK-47s. By the time our drone landed, the 2 vehicles also stopped in front of us. Now, the energy. Of course, in my moment, at that moment, I said, this is it. This is the end of it. This is the end of the entire project. But when they came out, of course, our interpreter was there, and we talked and we started explaining. And once the energy was understood, the smiles started getting exchanged. And that's the moment when that person who was holding, the leader of that kafila, who was holding the AK-47, he comes to us, he puts his hand on my shoulders, and he says, "Aapka kya khidmat kare?"
Oh.
Khidmat means, how can I actually honor you? Normally they would say, "Aapko chai pilaye or biscuit pilaye," but they had no chai and biscuit there. So he says, "Aapko banduk chahiye ki kartoos chahiye? Kya chahiye? Aapka kya khidmat kare?" That's what I landed.
That's an equivalent of honoring you. And lovely stories. I'm sure, I really wish that we could have many such series of talks, so that, we hear many of these simple narratives, so full of meanings. Thank you, Amardeep ji. I'm going to ask Jaspal to join us to finish off the webinar.
Thank you, Nien, for inviting me. First of all, I would like to thank Amardeep ji for your experiences and taking us through the journey of Guru Nanak. It's like, it would be a pleasure to follow you and learn from your experiences and know Guru Nanak better. And thanks, Professor Nien, especially for moderating this session and letting us get insights into Amardeep's efforts and life of Guru Nanak. Thanks everyone who has joined us from across the globe. I would like to extend an invitation to all of you for our exhibition on Verses of Guru Nanak at Visual Arts Gallery, India Habitat Center, New Delhi from 25th to 28th of November. It will be open for public. Also, do join us on the birth anniversary of Guru Nanak, 19th of November for the Guru Prof, where we have a special session on titled Oneness as an Expression of Baba Nanak. We will have the renowned Sufi singer Sonam Kalra, who will join us for the session. We will have Sameer Singh, chairperson of the Sikh Chamber of Commerce, and we will have Manisha Gera Baswani, an artist who has worked across the two sides of Punjab in her artworks. And we will have Major Rupinder Singh Bedi, who's part of Bedi Foundation and who's also a 15th generation descendant of Baba Nanak. Look forward to have you in that session where we find more insights from the field of art to music and again explore another concept of oneness with Baba Nanak. Thanks a lot for everyone to joining us.